Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider, a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarCross Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 291 of Recovering Presbyterorum Ordinis 19 on the Priesthood includes continual formation. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about priests need a personal prayer life based on ordinary means of sanctification. Today we are continuing with Chapter 3, the life of priests, and continuing Section 3a, the life of priests. And the summary of this section is priests need to continue to study in various areas, most of all in the sacred sciences. So, this is paragraph 19. It has 4 subparagraphs, A, B, C, D. A is about priests need to study theology throughout their priesthood. B, priests should have some understanding of the areas of human knowledge. C, we need various things set up to help with the ongoing intellectual formation of priests. And D, some priests need to go deep in theology and then use that to train others. D kind of speaks to me, being a theology professor. But anyways, let's get straight into A. So, let's read it. A, study and pastoral knowledge. Priests are admonished by their bishop in the sacred rite of ordination that they be mature in knowledge, and that their doctrine be spiritual medicine for the people of God. The knowledge of the sacred minister ought to be sacred, because it is drawn from the sacred source and directed to a sacred goal. Especially is it drawn from reading and meditating on the sacred scriptures, and it is equally nourished by the study of the Holy Fathers and other doctors and monuments of tradition. In order, moreover, that they may give apt answers to questions posed by men of this age, it is necessary for priests to know well the doctrines of the magisterium and the council of documents of Roman pontiffs, and to consult the best prudent writers of theological science. So I think this is pretty straightforward, talking about the sacred sciences and theology and things like this. We need priests who are studying these things, right? Ordination imposes duty to know the sacred and be mature about it, draw from the sacred, and direct it then towards ministry. Unless we have that in ourselves, we can't pass on to others. So we have different sources. First of all, we have the scriptures themselves. Priests, we should read the scriptures regularly. And then we have other things like the fathers and the doctors of the church. The fathers refer to the best ecclesiastical writers about the first 700 years, and the doctors of the church generally refer to highlights of the theology since then. I think there are spiritual authors who are valuable between them as well. And then talking about the council and magisterium. Read Trent, read Vatican II. If you're listening to this as a priest, good work. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then also good theologians. There's lots of good theologians. I have a whole stacks of them on my counter here. A lot of them, like Benedict XVI, Joseph Ratzinger, some of his writings from before he was Pope and things like that. And those are really helpful for your continuing ongoing study as a priest, because we need to keep going, need to keep learning so that we have information to pass on, so we don't just get stale. Because otherwise, I think priests can get a little stale where they just say the same things over and over again. You have the 3-year cycle of readings, and they have a 3-year cycle of homilies, and it's the same homilies. And by the time they're in a parish 8 years, some of the parishioners have memorized all their homilies. That's not a good idea. That's not ideal. So moving on to 19b, talks about how priests should have some understanding of areas of human knowledge. Let's read it. Since human culture and also sacred science has progressed in our times, priests urge certainly and without interruption to perfect their knowledge of the divine things and human affairs, and so prepare themselves to enter more opportunely into conversation with their contemporaries. When I read this, I thought more about the human things. We kind of covered the divine. We're talking about theologians and the good theologian in the last one, in the last subparagraph, but it's still important to keep updated on the new material. I have plenty of theology written in the 21st century on my shelf. It does for theology, it doesn't necessarily need to be 2025. We're not one of those sciences where reading something 5 years old is old. No, reading something 5 years old in theology is still very new. And we need help in other sciences, human sciences, that can be very helpful. For example, I know, I think 1 or 2 legionaries took degrees on school management or something like that. And so they're great for directing schools. Now they have this additional degree, this expertise in that. That's good for a priest to have that if that's going to be the ministry they're in. And we need pedagogy for teaching. I studied several courses on pedagogy, or one would call it andragogy, because we're teaching men, andros, adults, not pedos, children, like pedagogy and the other P word of sexual nature are both come from the pedos, the Greek word for child or boy. And so we need to study rhetoric and humanities to better able to preach. We need to study medicine. I studied a decent portion of certain areas of medicine so that I could better understand bioethics, so that I would understand that. I'm not an expert in any of those fields of medicine, but I'm competent enough in reading the material that I can understand the material and that I won't make a gross error if I'm doing bioethics about it. And I think a lot of this helps dialogue with modern man, because modern man comes with all these kind of preconceived notions, and having philosophy, having these ideas, it's very helpful to be able to enter into dialogue with them and hopefully convert some of them. Moving on to C, we need various things set up to help with the ongoing intellectual formation of priests, both practical. Well, this number is strictly more on the practical, but let's read it. C, therefore, let priests be more readily study and effectively learn the methods of evangelization and the apostolate. Let opportunities be prepared with all care, such as in the institution of courses and meetings according to territorial conditions, and the erection of centers of pastoral studies, the establishment of libraries, and the qualified supervision of studies by suitable persons. Moreover, let bishops, either individually or united in groups, see to it that all their priests established intervals, especially a few years after their ordination, may be able to frequent courses in which they will be given the opportunity to acquire full knowledge of the pastoral methods and theological science, both in order that they may strengthen their spiritual life and mutually communicate their apostolic experiences with their brothers. New pastors and those who have been newly begun pastoral work, as well as those who are sent to other dioceses or nations, should be helped by these and other suitable means with special care. I think this is pretty straightforward about this idea of continuing ongoing formation, the practical area of how we do pastoral care, how we evangelize, things like that. And there are a number of courses like this, and a lot of times they're very specific. For example, I know Divine Mercy University has a course on spiritual direction. It's for priests and lay people, but I think it's very valuable for priests who are going to take up more of a ministry of spiritual direction to have a course like that. There's a few other courses around the country that do spiritual direction too. I just know about that one more. And we have courses on for new pastors and different things. So there's another institute that does that. I forget the name of it. And then a lot of times we'll have enculturation places. I know a number of dioceses will send their men for one of their summers as they're kind of getting close to ordination. They'll go one of their summers to a country somewhere in Latin America to take a course in Spanish culture, like Hispanic culture, because they want these priests, even if they aren't Hispanic themselves, to be able to minister to the Hispanics in their diocese. So it's an enculturation. Obviously, these are ones who are coming to the United States from a kind of Anglo-U.S. culture to a Hispanic U.S. culture, but that same idea goes there. And often we need refreshers on theology and pastoral things. A lot of times convocations have this. Most dioceses have a convocation where all the priests get together for a week or for 2 or 3 days. And a lot of times they'll have a few courses that are a bit of a refresher on different points in this area. And sometimes they'll even have courses outside of this. I remember one diocese, they had a bioethics course for a day. They brought in somebody from the National Catholic Bioethics Center. This was when I was a religious brother, and I attended it because I was just like, hey, it's interesting. I had not had nearly the training I do now. It was a good course, but it was a good introduction. Anyway, or a good refresher for the priests who probably studied it in seminary. Anyways, let's move on to D, our last subparagraph 19D. Some priests need to go in deep in theology and then train others. This is what I'm saying. This is my responsibility. I teach in the seminary. I have studied a lot of theology. I studied 2 degrees after the normal priest degree, the normal Master of Divinity priest degree. So let's read it. D. Finally, the bishops will be solicitous that there will be some who dedicate themselves to a deeper study of theology, that there will not be lacking suitable teachers for the formation of clerics, and the rest of the priests and the faithful will be helped to acquire the doctrine they need, and that healthy progress will be encouraged in the sacred disciplines so necessary for the church. Again, this is pretty straightforward. It basically is telling us that we need priests who study deep theology. We need priests to train clerics. We need them also for other areas to help in the doctrine of the church. We need priests who are this for different things. Like, for example, we need priests who are really trained in bioethics to be able to help write documents on this for if there's some kind of bioethical issue that comes up at the state level or the federal level. We need priests, and we need lay theologians as well, but probably some who are clerics who are better able to understand that and so express it. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully these kind of priests like myself can be a great help to all these seminarians and help them to come to know, love, and serve Jesus better, help them to really appreciate this theology and the time and dedication that the church gives to having young men spend 4 years studying theology. That concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help Starcross Priesthood and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly join the Starcross Patreon. Tomorrow we're going to continue with the next paragraphs of Presbyterium Ordinis. One of the first times you have paragraphs. I think it might be the only time in this whole document. It's 20 to 21. I would need to pay priests reasonably. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan.
Amen.